Okay, hello. I thought I would make a video on how to approach the refactor of the client of Codesandbox. Just a short backstory. It used to run on Redux. It was getting really complex, and it was very difficult to get your head around all the complexities because it was split. All the application logic was split between all the components. So you had to visit a lot of files to understand what the heck was actually going on. And with the Cerebral refactor, we were able to remove all that application logic away from the components and let them just handle the UI, which is insanely complex in itself, and rather have this declarative approach where you get your head around the complexities. So what we want is like a top-down declarative approach where you can kind of just read the story of what the code is doing. And then we have small composable pieces of logic behind it. Unlike if we would use, for example, MobX, we would have just these methods for doing things, and what we would end up with then is, instead of having this top-down view of what is happening, it would be drilling in. We would have like actions, calling actions, calling actions, calling actions, and that is just not maintainable. And it's very difficult to reuse logic. So I think that has worked really well for Codesandbox, and we want to keep that. But we want to do it with Typescript. And Cerebral doesn't support TypeScript very well. But the project that does support... Oh, where am I now? Let's see, Overmind. A project that does support it is Overmind. As you can see, it has a similar declarative approach. But as I said, it does support TypeScript. So how do we do this? I learned a lot refactoring from Redux to Cerebral. I actually had to do it like 3 times or something, because it's not only the refactor, it has to be in tune with the release cycle of Codesandbox, or we get into merge issues, and it can be very problematic. So the current plan is, first of all, we should refactor the providers. The cool thing about that approach is that refactoring the providers, like, we just copy them into an Overmind folder that does absolutely nothing to the current client, but we just copy it over and then rename it to TypeScript and then do whatever refactoring is required. And that folder will be called effects, because it's called effects in Overmind, not providers, but it's basically the exact same thing. And what's nice about that is that we can actually push these updates with the current release cycle. So that means that we don't feel like we're working on 2 different apps. We are working on the same app, and we are gradually moving towards the new client, which just as a developer, just for motivation, I think that's super important. So anyways, we move over the effects or refactor providers into effects. And then we need to look into the sequences and all the logic. And what's really nice about Overmind is that you can run, they're not called sequences in Overmind, they're called actions, but you can call the actions from the dev tool. So that means that, okay, I want to refactor this sequence. So I go through it, I refactor it into Overmind, the functional API in Overmind. And then I can trigger that sequence in the current client, looking into the Cerebral dev tools, which shows me all the mutations and the providers being called and stuff. And then I can just run that same, that refactored sequence on the Overmind dev tools. And that also gives the same overview. What mutations have been done, what effects has been called. And then we just manually verify that, okay, it does what it's supposed to do. And then we just have to, and still we can just push this with the rest of the application in the current release cycle. without affecting anything in the current client. And when we feel that things are running as it should, then we can do the big jump. And I actually had to record this video twice because just looking into the code, I got an idea. So the problem is that how do we get make the components look at Overmind instead of Cerebral? And that's very problematic because we don't want to run the application logic twice, and we can't really share it. What I mean is to say we can partially do it because opening the patron page requires the user with all the other pages. So how should we load the user twice, and how should we do all that? But what we can do instead there, and this is kind of crazy, but I think it will work. Because currently, if we look into, let's see, patron index. So here we are using MobX inject, and this is generic. This has nothing to do with MobX. Inject is just a way to grab something from the context of React and put it as a prop here. And then we have the observer. So what we should be able to do is just go into the main index file here. Where is it? On the provider. And instead of providing from the controller, we manually expose the actions of Overmind as signals. And we also expose the state as store. And the syntax is actually exactly the same. So when we, for example, here point to store patron tier, it would be the same in Overmind, only that it's called state. But that is exactly what we're kind of going around. And then it's still using observer, but hey, it doesn't matter. What's important is to move the components into Overmind first, and then make everything run. So we can do that, and it's the same for the signals. I think there's an example. Yeah, inject signals. What we do is we kind of inject the actions instead. See if everything runs. And when that is done, then we are actually on Overmind, and that's the important thing. So what we can do after we got that running is then we are kind of more free. We are already on Overmind, but we don't have the components in TypeScript yet. So what we can do then is basically just remove take one component at a time, refactor it to TypeScript. We can remove the inject and the observer, and we can then use connect from Overmind instead, which gives the typing and everything. And yeah, basically maybe even a refactor into hooks. Should probably do that. But my point is that we can have this instant transition into Overmind by just changing out the provider. And I think we should do that. There will probably be issues, but I think it's easier to just flip everything over, work through those issues, than trying to figure out how to kind of refactor everything in one go, and it will take forever. Okay. So hopefully that plan made sense, and I will just start with the providers and just keep you posted. And if you want to help out, please do, but maybe it's easier to help as you see my reports coming in on what I've actually been doing and stuff. And I also got a previous colleague who wants to help out with this. So I think we'll and especially that this strategy is based on pushing out stuff with the current release cycle, it will feel like we have great progress very quickly. Awesome. Really looking forward to getting this done and work on Codesandbox, and so happy to see that many more people are involved now and committed to making this amazing tool, even amazinger, more amazing. Okay, bye bye.